Peace to the 12. This is yet another historical video. I've been working on this for about a week. Y'all see the title is called A True Arab. Okay, yeah, a true Arab. Black before beige. Now, like most of my videos that are historical, really most of my videos, period, this is going to be controversial. I really don't care because the truth is the truth. That's just that. And in this video, I'm going to be tackling something that has been in my comments for the longest time, which is that people will say that the Israelites resemble the Arabs. You know, most of the people that put that in my comments are, to my knowledge, probably Caucasians. But in their ignorance, when they say that comment, I say this, like I was telling my brother a couple months ago, I don't think they really know what they mean when they say that the Israelites resemble the Arabs, you know, because you're going to come to find out that the original Arab, he looked a little different than he looks today. And I'm going to prove that once again through books, Anthropology. I'm going to get some scriptures, of course, like I always do. And I got a whole bunch of pictures and paintings and literature. So let's get straight to it. So what they know, what they call the so-called Arab, in the Bible, the original people of the Arabs are known as the Ishmaelites. Okay, this is Easton's Bible Dictionary. It says Ishmael, okay, which translates to God hears. So Ishmael, he had 12 sons who became the founders of so many Arab tribes or colonies. The Ishmaelites who spread over the wide desert spaces of northern Arabia from the Red Sea to the Euphrates. Okay, so yes, Ishmael became the progenitor of what you call the so-called Arabs. And I'm going to touch on that word Arab later on, the actual word Arab. I'm going to touch on that later on in this video. But even when you Google it, you say Arabs identify as Ishmael, it'll tell you Ishmael, commonly regarded by both Jews and Arabs as the progenitor of the Arabs, is considered a messenger and a prophet in the Quran. Yeah, I'm not getting on the Quran. But anyway, so even when you Google things, right? And I was going to see if I could find the comments, because I had 2 or 3 comments, maybe more than that, on some of my videos that people said what I was just mentioning. They would say, oh, actually he looked like an Arab, you know, and yada, yada, yada. I hear that all the time. I know that one guy, what's that dude's name? No Cab Stallone or whatever that dude's name is. I know he was saying that too. There's a lot of people that say that, but they don't really know what the original Arabs look like, but I'm going to prove them to you in this video. But I was going to go through those comments anyway, but the thing is, man, I do hundreds of videos. I'm not going to go through every comment. I'm just not going to do it. But they there somewhere in one of my videos that I've done. But unless they deleted it, which I doubt they deleted their comments. But anyway, these are just common Googles. They say Jesus, which his name is Yahawashi. They say Jesus wasn't white. He was a brown-skinned Middle Eastern man. Middle Eastern Jew. According to anthropologists, this is what he looked like, yada yada. And all these are fake images. None of these are what Yahawashi looked like. But they're letting you know that yes, who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ, his real name is Yahawashi Hamashiach. They're letting you know that no, he did not look like a so-called Caucasian. And even when you look up rabbis, right, the rabbis will tell you that the original Israelites were brown skinned, is what they say. But as you all know, you already know what the real Israelites look like if you've been watching my channel. But they themselves admit that. Even in the Talmud, which I don't believe, I might do a video on the Talmud at another time on me dissecting it. But even in the Talmud, it will tell you that the first generation Jews resembled the color of boxwood, which of course is brown. Different shades of brown. But anyway, so you get all these images and they say that Jesus looks like an Arab. You got all these depictions, right? All these depictions are fake depictions according to the scriptures, because they actually give you something to go on what the Lord Yahawashi looked like. Okay? They actually give you something to go on. And none of these can be correct, because look at his hair. Well, the scriptures tell you in Revelations 1:14 that the Lord's hairs were, his head and his hairs were white like wool, as white as snow, and his eyes were as a flame of fire. None of these guys have white hair. They're all imposters. Okay? So that's already ruled out. And I already know people are like, well, when are you going to get to the historical stuff and all that? Hey, man, hey, chill out, bro. I'm going to get there. I'm gonna get there when I get there. Okay. But yeah, these are ruled out. Now, when you go through anthropology and you talk about so-called black people, I've done this many times when I went into videos on Europe. I've done videos on Europe, India, America, South America, North America. I've done videos on the Vikings and specifics. I've done videos on the Egyptians, etc. Right? But even when you look at a modern anthropologist through secular lenses, so-called, right? In anthropology, they'll tell you themselves. Well, first, let's go to anthropology. Anthropology is the study of the origin and development of human societies and cultures. That's what anthropology is. So it's the study of the origins of human societies, right? So even these anthropologists will tell you that the first people that were on the earth, and they're correct, they'll tell you that the first people that were on the earth were so-called black people. So going off of that, you can tell that if the first people were so-called black, that would mean that when the nations were being formed, clearly they were dark-skinned. But I'll just prove what I'm saying. This is just on Google. This is what they say. It says the first people were black. Evidence still suggests that all modern humans are descended from an African population of Homo sapiens that spread out of Africa about 60,000 years ago. Now, do I believe that? No, I do not. But I'll tell you, I dissect it. I take the meat from the bones. They are correct when they say that all modern humans are descended from a so-called black population. I'm replacing the word African from so-called black because so-called blacks are the original man. That's correct. And they tell you that themselves through local archaic populations. Okay? But I'm not getting into the 60,000 years ago. I don't believe that number, and I damn sure don't believe in the conventional terms as Neanderthals and Homo sapiens and all that. But I'm just saying, they themselves admit to you that the first peoples that were around were so-called black, which is the truth. Okay, and even as a matter of fact, so-called black people can still give birth to other nations of people to this day. You have Nigeria. Look up at that Nigerian couple. They gave birth to a blonde-haired, blue-eyed white baby. It was two so-called black people. They gave birth to that, so that still happens. Okay, but anyway, even right here, right, study.com, were the first humans black? Yes, the first humans were almost certainly black. The human species evolved in East Africa about 200,000 years ago. Yeah, no. No, they didn't. But I'll do a video on evolution at another time. But they tell you, yeah, they were black. And this is black skin was necessary for survival in this hot and sunny climate. I'm glad that you said that black skin was necessary for a hot and sunny climate. I'm glad you said that because we all know that the so-called Arabs, they are from the deserts. Just like the East Africans are in the deserts. Just like Egypt was in the deserts, which means what? The black skin was necessary for survival. That means they're telling you that all those inhabitants were so-called black. All right? So, even in, they say ancient man crossed Arabia to settle the rest of the world. All right, newfound stone artifacts suggest humankind left Africa, traveling through the Arabian Peninsula instead of hugging its coast. As long thought, researchers say modern humans first arose about 200,000 years ago in Africa. Yada. But they're letting you know that once they left Africa, now this is according to them, they went to Arabia, and then after Arabia, they went throughout all the world. Do I go into that? No, because we know that the ark landed on what is a mountain near Turkey. I believe it's titled Ararat. You know, now people go, well, I don't believe, whatever. But tell you what, and I'll show you the map. This is Ethiopia to Yemen, Saudi Arabia. This is, you see how it went? That's according to them. But once again, just to reiterate, they say that the first humans were almost certainly black, which is correct. I've said this many times in my videos. Shem, Ham, and Japheth were all so-called black people. I did that. I've done video on that, actually. I'll probably revisit that topic to prove what I'm saying. But, so with all that being said, right, I'm going to show you a couple pictures before I go into the books. I'm going to show you a couple pictures of people who are still identified as Arabs with dark skin. All right. This is Arabs of Socotra, the Socotri people, sometimes referred as the Socotran, are an Arabian ethnic group native to the Gulf Aden island of Socotra, right? Afro-Asiatic family, right? So these are the Socotra people. I'm going to put some more of them on the screen. These are the Socotra people. The Socotra people. Okay? The Socotra people. Now, as you can see, the dark skin. The Socotra people. The dark skin. But know they have so-called black skin, blackish skin, right? But look, they don't have the Hamite or the so-called African features. They have the Arab features. Why is that? Because once again, like the title of this video, a true Arab, black before beige. Okay, so they have the Arab-like features, what they call so-called Shemitic features, what they call it, or they say Semitic features, but they have the dark black skin. All right, I mean these guys are darker than me. All right, for those of you who don't know, I'm a so-called light skin, so-called red bone. Once again, these are some Soquatra people. Okay. Now, that's being said, right? So that's one thing, one little small thing. That's just one race of people, or that's just one group of people, one clan, so to speak. But as I go deeper into this, you guys are going to understand that there's going to be a lot of people that are going to start talking about what the Arabs resembled when they write their documents. Now, another thing that sets it away that lets you know that the original Arabs are so-called dark skinned is racial slurs. We go to racial slurs, which are common derogatory stereotypes, or racial slur, like the N-word, etc. Right? A common derogatory stereotype, right? What is a stereotype? A widely held but fixed, oversimplified image or idea of a particular type of person. So a generalized thing of somebody. Like generally they'll say that I don't know what like let's say generally they'll say black people are ashy or something, whatever. I don't know. Whatever people thinking about these days. But nonetheless, that's a stereotype, a generalized thing. All right. Another word for stereotype is this word, standardize. All right, standardize. Standardize means adopt something as one standard. So, why is that important? Because one of the racial slurs towards the so-called Arab, I'm sure you guys already figured it out, is the word sand N-word. All right, sand N-word is a racial slur to a Middle Eastern or North African descent. Now, you would ask the question, why do they call them sand N-words? All right, for those of you that don't know, the N-word, I keep saying the word N-word because of YouTube, but the N-word the N-word just means black, literally. It turned into a derogatory term, but originally it wasn't even derogatory, and it did stand for a so-called black person. I'm going to prove that in this as well, but you would ask, why would they call these people sand N-words? And once again, the word N-word means black. So really it would translate to sand blacks. Now, the sand N-word is a derogatory term for people typically of Middle Eastern descent. Okay? So you would ask the question, what do you mean by that? What do you mean by that? Why do you call them sand N-words? Well, let's prove. The N-word is a contemptuous term, an insulting contemptuous term for a black person. Offensive word for a black person. And the reason they were called sand N-words is because the original Arab is a so-called black person. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Sand N-word, derogatory term for a person from the Middle East, Arab, South Asian world. We're going to touch on South Asia in this video for very briefly, right? And some people can say, well, no, that's talking about, well, look at these other things. They say dune, coon, dune, N-word, sand, monkey, all this type of stuff. So that is, we all know that the raccoon thing is once again compared to a so-called black person in America and other places too. So why do these so-called Arabs share these same terminologies? I'll tell you why. Because like I just told you, you're going to find out that they were black before beige. And I'm also going to touch on how they became beige in this video. I can already tell it's going to be a long video because I'm nowhere near at the end of this. But yeah, it's a derogatory term. Now the N-word just means black. All right, Spanish, see negro, blacks, black African, black. So that's the N-word, right? Now you go to this word negro, the member of a black skin race, black, Niger, black. And by the way, the N-word is actually in the Bible. I'm going to prove that because it says N-word. It says N-word, see negro, see Niger. Okay, go to the word Niger. The term Niger means black, and that's also of Nigeria, Latin Niger, which means black. And the N-word is actually in the Bible. That's in the Bible. Hold on, Salakia. I'll prove that that's in the Bible. Let's go to Acts 13:1. I've done this many times. Acts 13:1. Now there were in the church that was at Antioch certain prophets and teachers, as Barnabas and Simon, that was called Niger, and Lucius of Cyrene, and Manaen, which had been brought up with Herod the Tetrarch, and Saul. So Simon was called the N-word. We know that the N-word means black. Let's go to the Bible dictionary to get more on that. Look, Niger. Niger means black. Niger equals black. Surname of the prophet Simon. Latin origin, black, Niger. A Christian, Niger, black, Niger. All right, so Simon was an Israelite. How do we know he was an Israelite? Because Simon was a prophet. And that would mean that Simon was so-called black. Okay? And just saying Niger is not the Niger is not the correct way of saying it. The correct way of saying it is the N-word. I'm going to highlight it real fast to prove that. All right, here it is. Niger is really spelled Niger. Okay? Niger. You see that? So that's that. Like I told you, the N-word is in the Bible. Okay? And the word Negro in an extended sense is also in the Bible when you go to Numbers 25:7, when it says, and when Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron, the priest saw it, he rose up from among the congregation and took a javelin in his hand. So Phinehas is the grandson of Aaron. Now, we go to this word Phinehas in the Bible again, Bible dictionary. Phinehas, mouth of brass. Phinehas, the name of 3 Israelites. Now the term Phinehas, go to the proper name masculine, Egyptian. Panahasi, the Negro. Okay? The Negro. So, once again, in the extended sense, that is in there. Now, see, that proves that. Now, going back to this term N-word, like I said, it's applied to black because the N-word means the word black. And there are other people other than African Americans who are called the N-word. It even tells you that in this etymology. Etymology meaning origin of the word. Okay? And it goes, it was also applied by the English colonists to the dark-skinned native peoples in India. So why was the N-word applied to the dark-skinned peoples of India? Because these are the Dravidian peoples, the Alamo Dravidians. All right, they come from Elam. These are the South Indians. All right, the purest form of an Indian. I did a whole video on this titled India Was Black and Flagged. It was a 46-minute video. You can check that out for more on that. So, the N-word was applied to Indians. Why? Because they had black complexion, black skin complexion. It was also applied to Australians. Why? Because the Australians had that same so-called black skin complexions. The N-word was applied to them. It was also applied to the Polynesians. Why? Because they have that so-called black skin complexion. So all these different people were called the N-word, and I had to put these smiley faces on because Shorty had them things out. But it was applied to them. So, first of all, if all these 3 people were called the N-word because of their black-like skin, so-called, then that would let you know that the reason why the so-called Arab is called the sand N-word, it's the same reason. It's the same reason. But we're going to keep going. I haven't even gotten to the historical books yet, but I'm going to get there eventually. Dictionary of American Regional English, Volume 3, 1996. It says that the N-word was especially applied to an American Indian. Okay, it was especially applied to an American Indian. Well, I've done videos on that in the past about the Black Carolina Indians, which was 100% proof. And I did facts about a black-faced Boston Tea Party, which I talked about the Boston Indians having so-called black skin complexion as well. So once again, it was the N-word is always applied to black-like skinned people, even though black people are really different shades of brown, from light to dark brown. But we use the term black because that's the term that people identify with, unfortunately, because they have been deculturalized. Right? So, the N-word was applied to the American Indian as well. I just proved why. And the N-word was applied to Filipinos as well. Well, why was it applied to Filipinos? Because the original Filipinos were so-called black as well. They're known as the Ada people, spelled A-E-T-A. The Ada people, the first African natives of Asia and the original inhabitants of the Philippines. They're known as the Ada people. As you can see, they look like so-called black people. They're the indigenous Filipino peoples. Okay? They were also called the N-word. Why? Because they were black. So the saying N-word had to be because the Arabs were so-called black. See? I'm trying to tell you. So hopefully I'm making sense. Now let's go. We finally made it to 20 minutes in. We made it to the historical sources. We made it to the historical sources. This is a guy I show all the time on my channel. Born in the 1700s. Born in 1770. A guy by the name of Godfrey Higgins. Wrote a very famous, very controversial book titled Anacalypsis. Okay, we're going to get to page 44 of Anacalypsis, where he says that, where he compares the Arabians to Ethiopians. Okay, this is page 44 of Anacalypsis by Godfrey Higgins. The Bishop of Avranches thinks he has found 3 provinces in the name of Kus. Kus is going into Kush. Ethiopia, Arabia, and Susania. All right. There were 3 Ethiopias. That is countries of blacks. So 3 countries of blacks. What does it mean, countries of blacks? Once again, one of the countries of blacks was Arabia, Ethiopia, and Susania. I don't know where Susania is at. You brothers can fill me in on that in the comments. But yeah, the name Kus, and Kus just means black. So it's not saying that all these people were Ethiopians. He's saying that all these people had the name Kus because they were all black-skinned people. Ethiopia, Arabia, and Susania. Countries of blacks. 3 Ethiopias. 3 countries of blacks, because the term Ethiopia, for those of you that don't know, the term Ethiopia means the land of the blacks. Okay, so there's 3 lands or countries of blacks. Also, it goes the country of burnt faces. All right, and just for even a reminder to go even further on that, just to show you that an Ethiopian doesn't have to be someone native to Ethiopia. For a while, the so-called black man was just called an Ethiopian, or some people were, because, you know, I did a whole video on Egypt another time. But look, this is according to the Metropolitan Museum of Art. It said all black Africans were known as Ethiopians to the ancient Greeks, even though when you go to the real ancient Greeks, you'll find out that they had a dark complexion too. But I'll do a video on them at another time. But look, all black Africans were known as Ethiopians, and he was calling the Arabians Ethiopians. Why? Because they were so-called black. Now, let's go to another historical source. This is Nature Knows No Color Line by J.A. Rogers, page 57. All right. It says Negro ancestry and the white race. This is page 57. It says, many American Negroes are indistinguishable from Arabs. See that? The New York Times, February 2nd, 1045, reports of the meeting between President Roosevelt and King Ibn Saud. It was a matter of considerable astonishment of the king's servants to discover American Negro cooks and mess boys, and it was more than difficult to persuade them that these were not also Arabs. The matter was never entirely cleared up. So the American Negro cooks and mess boys, Ibn Saud thought they were just other Arabs. Okay? Now, there's twofold reasons for that. Number one, you have something known in history as the Arab slave trade, which means what? You have so-called Israelites over there in Arab countries. We have Israelite foreigners over there in the Arab countries. And also, that's because the Arabs, the original Arabs, are black-skinned themselves. But we have different phenotypes. We have different bone structure, noses, and all type of things like that. But that's the twofold right there. And I'm going to get on the Arab slave trade at the end of this video. Okay? But let's keep reading on. Let's get another historical source. A guy by the name of Al-Mubarad, or Abu al-Abbas, Muhammad ibn Yazid, was born in 826 AD. Okay? And just for point of reference, at this time of 826 AD, Barash Iraq, just for point of reference, the Arabian invasion of Egypt took place in 640 AD. So this is 200 years after that. And they're about to tell you that the so-called Arabs were black. All right, the Ishmaelites. All right, table of contents, Al-Mubarad al-Kamil, the perfect one. I'm going to go down to here. It says, I am the green one, is the dark one, the black one. Now watch. The Arabs used to take pride in their darkness and blackness. And they had a distaste for a light complexion. And they used to say that a light complexion was the complexion of the non-Arabs. So they used to take pride in their blackness. You see that? Black before beige, the true Arab. And they used to take pride in their blackness. Just like when I did that video on the Indians of India. They used to take pride in their blackness too. Now 70% of them bleach their skin. 70% of their women. Or it might have been, it was 90% of their women, I think, bleach their skin. But anyway. So and they said the lighter complexion was an example of a non-Arab. I'll touch on that later in a minute. So let's keep going. Lost my page. Pride in their blackness and darkness. The Arabs used to. And they thought a light complexion was a complexion of a non-Arab. See that? Let's go to Abu Muhammad Abad Allah Abin. I can't pronounce it. But anyway. 9th century commentary, Book of Oaths, Book 15. I'm just going to go down to here. But it says, we know, therefore, that many modern ruling families of Saudi Arabia and the Persian Gulf are not the complexion of early Arabs, but would have been considered the color of their slaves. Yeah, talking about, once again, the Arab slave trade. But, yeah, they had the same complexion. Which also shows you that just because you have the same complexion doesn't mean you're the same people, because you have many dark-skinned people that had other dark-skinned people in slavery. Anyway, that's because black is not a race, it's a skin color. Okay? That's why you shouldn't be identifying as black. It's not a race. But anyway. We also know that the tribe of Banu Tamim bin Murrah just mentioned was not generally the color of Arab slaves like modern fair-skinned Saudis because of such stories as that of Abu Miskin Ed Darimi, a 7th century poor man of the Darim clan of the Banu Tamim bin Murrah. Miskin is said to have gotten mad because a woman he sought snubbed him for a fair-skinned rich man that was not purely Arab in origin. All he could do was arrogantly proclaim, I am Miskin. To those who know me, my color is black, the color of the Arabs. See that? So the color of the Arabs, once again, synonymous with black. They call it sand N-word, which means sand blacks, because the N-word means black. This is a guy, Augusta Mariette. August Mariette. Born February 11th, 1821. Okay? This is what he had to say. He was an archaeologist, an Egyptologist, and a French scholar. That's what he had to say in his book, Outlines of Ancient Egyptian History. This is what he had to say. This is page 27. Give me a drink of water. This is page 27. He says, I'm going to go to the highlighted portion for sake of time. He says, the presence of a Turanian race in Mesopotamia at a remote epoch is no more questioned by most Assyriologists. It does not mean that the whole bulk of the invaders, the entire population that settled in Egypt. So there were invaders that settled into Egypt. Was of Turanian origin. He's saying that not all the people that invaded Egypt were of the Turanian origin, but a lot of them were. Okay? It would be contrary to well-established historical facts. It is certain that all that remained in Egypt of the Hyksos in the language and the worship of the name of Amu, by which they were called, everything points to decided Semitic influence. But the kings may very well not have been Semites. All right, he's about to go into the Turkish invasion, which were so-called Caucasians, so-called Caucasian Muslims, the Turks, which is actually where we get that beige color from. But anyway. All right, how often do we see in Eastern monarchies and even in European states a difference of origin between the ruling class to which the royal family belongs and the mass of people? So that tells you that you had different races of kings in Europe that are ruling over other people too, which I will do a video on medieval Europe at another time. But we need not to leave Western Asia and Egypt. Now watch this. We find their Turks ruling over nations to the race of which they do not belong. So the Turks are ruling over races which they do not belong. Once again, the Turks were Caucasian Muslims. Although they have adopted their religion. See, they adopted their religion, which is what? The Muslim religion. In the same way as the Turks of Baghdad, who are Finns, now reign over Semites. Turian kings may have led into Egypt and governed a population of mixed origin, where Semitic element was prevalent. All right, mixing races, okay? Which is how black went to beige, okay? But we're gonna keep going. We're gonna keep getting these books, man. Oh, let me go back to where I was at. Let me go back to where I was at. All right, so we just established that. Now, these are the Turian peoples. These are the Turian peoples he was speaking of. The Turian invader race. As you can see, they're Caucasians. The Turkic peoples, Turkic expansion, these are Caucasians. Blonde hair, the whole nine. All right, young women of the Turanians, all right, which are Turks, Caucasians. Okay, this is the Ottoman Empire. They occupied all these places, and they intermixed with all the peoples of all of these places. All right, the Turks took control of Arabia. All right, around the 9th century, or actually the 10th century. In 1055, or would that be the 11th century? I'd be getting my centuries mixed up. I want to say it's the 11th century, but yeah. That's how they got in Arabia. This is how they began to get whitened, okay? Because a lot of them intermixed with the native populace. The Turks intermixed with the Arabs. And this is the former countries of the Ottoman Empire. It's a long list, but I'm going to go to the Asia part. Aden, Abkhazia, Anatolia, Jordan, Lebanon, Israel, Oman, Palestine, Qatar, Saudi Arabia. Multiple times they occupied Saudi Arabia. Syria, Yemen, Kuwait. Okay, so they were occupying these territories and intermarrying between the races. Once again, the Turks are Caucasians, and they're still over there. You go to a Palestinian. This is a Turk woman and Palestinian. This is a Palestinian family. As you can see, they just look like so-called white people with slight tans. With slight tans, except for like maybe this person. But, you know. And that's how the changing happened. And I know that once again this is controversial, but hey, guess what, man? It's the truth. And now I'm going to touch on the term Arab. The reason why the Bible doesn't call them Arabs, they call them Ishmaelites. And the term Arab actually goes back to the term mixed. The term Arab means mixed. Mixed people. Arab. Mixing, mingling. This is according to Strong's Hebrew lexicon. Arab. Dusky, darkened, mixed, mingling, meddling, trading. Yeah. But anyway, mingled people, especially the people of Arabia, mixed multitude. Okay? Mixture of a mongrel race. All type of thing. That's because the term Arab means mixed. So really there is no such thing as Arab biblically, because once again Ishmael was known as Ishmael. And you have a lot of people that identify as so-called Arabs that are in actuality Turks or Caucasians, Idumeans, Edomites, and Amalekites. Okay? Believe it or not. But nonetheless, once again Ishmael was 12 sons. They founded the Arab tribe. So they're really Ishmaelite. The true Arab is an Ishmaelite. Okay? But you have certain people who are going out under identifying as Arabs that are actually Turks. And just for example of the mixture, you have the Rashida people. This is from the Turk admixture, especially this person. But look, through the Turk admixture, you have the Rashida people. Well, this is a picture of the Rashida people that clearly have not been as mixed or mixed at all. This has been Rashid people, the Rashida, camel herders, as you can see. All right, so-called black-skinned people with the Arab features. Okay? Here are some more people over here in Saudi Arabia. Al-Jamal, look, so-called black-skinned person. So-called black-skinned person. So-called black-skinned person. I believe Rashida is a place. I believe it's a place where a lot of people go to buy camels. I believe. Here's some more dark-skinned so-called Arabs, but they all have these Arab features. They don't have African. They don't have what you call West African features. They don't. Okay, reading on. This is a guy by the name of Heinrich von Maltzen. Okay, born in 1826. Let's see what Heinrich von Maltzen had to say in his book Geography of South Arabia. Highlighted portion, page 121. The inhabitants of this part of Arabia nearly all belong to the race of Himyar. Now, when you type in the word Himyar, you're going to get these brown, light brown skin, or so-called white people, Himyar people. But we know that the Himyars are black, according to what he's about to say. The inhabitants of this part of Arabia nearly all belong to the race of Himyar. Their complexion is almost as black as that of the Abyssinians. Okay? So they had the same black complexion as the Abyssinians. I'm going to pull them up in a minute. But this shows you that these are fake images. But the Abyssinian people are also known as the Habesha people, which I believe are considered Semitic, according to rabbis and all that stuff, what they call so-called Ethiopian Jews. But these are the Habesha peoples, the Abyssinians. They said they were almost as black as the Abyssinians. Well, here's a picture of the Abyssinian, the Habesha people. You see? The Habesha people. As you can see, they are very dark-skinned, complected. Right? Moving on. Same part. Georgia of Southern Arabia. Page 122. Mr. Paul Grave said the southern portion of Arabia was of remarkable interest because it appeared to be the cradle of the pure original Arab race. So the pure original Arab race was almost as black as the Habesha people in South Arabia. Okay, that's what Heinrich Maltzan had to say. Let's go to Richard Francis Burton, born in 1821. Let's see what Richard Francis Burton had to say in his book, Personal Narrative of a Pilgrimage to El Medina and Mecca, page 240. All right, highlighted portion. He says, the men were Ben Harb of the great Hijazi tribe, which has kept its blood pure for the last 13 centuries. So they kept their blood pure for the last 13 centuries. They were not intermixing. How much more we know not, but they had been corrupted by intercourse with pilgrims. See, corrupted with intercourse with pilgrims. They would have resented this with asperity had it proceeded from other own people, but the Turkish pilgrim, see, Turkish pilgrims had intermixed with the Hijazi tribe. Now he's gonna describe the Hijazi tribe as small chocolate-colored beings, stunted and thin. So small chocolate-covered beings. Okay. So this is the Hijazi tribe. This is a picture of the Hijazi tribe, 1932 by Bertram Thomas. As you can see, so-called black skin, so-called black skin complected. And he said they had small chocolate-colored beings. Well, we know that chocolate complexion is usually compared to the so-called black people. A chocolate skin refers to people with dusky or light brown pigmentation. Chocolate skin. Dark-skinned sisters. Chocolate skin. I just typed in chocolate complexion. Look what popped up. Okay. Black women. Chocolate. Okay. Different shades of brown. Okay. Let's see what John Peterson had to say. 1947. John Peterson. Oman's Diverse Society of Southern Oman. El-Kara. European observers have made much of their physical resemblance to Somalis or Ethiopians, but there is no historical evidence of any connection. So he's saying, so they try to compare these people with the Somalis and Ethiopians, but there's no historical evidence of a connection. But why are they comparing them? Because they resemble one another. And just for you, these are pictures of the Ethiopians and Somalians, which are chocolate complexion, so-called black skin complected. Okay, these are the Al-Kara people. You understand why they try to compare them to Somalians, because they have that same skin complexion. All right, the mountain village of Al-Kara, I believe it's in Saudi Arabia. See that? The Omanis, majority of the population consists of Arabs. Majority of the population consists of Arabs of the Omani. Here's some pictures of people in Oman. Dark skin complected people here. Okay, Henry Field, anthropologist. We talked about anthropologists, study of origins of human societies. Henry Field, he was born in 1902. This is what Henry Field had to say in his book, The Anthropology of Iraq. Number 1, the Upper Euphrates. He says, I forgot to put the page, but he says, among these Negroid features, we may be counted normal in Arabs. So Negroid features are accounted normal in Arabs. Are the full, rather averted lips, shortness and white of nose, certain blanks in the bearded areas of the face between the lower lip and chin on the cheeks. Okay. Often the features of the more Negroid Arabs are derivatives of Dravidian India rather than the heritage of Hamitic Africa. So he's letting you know that these Arabs are not Hamites, they're not Africans. Okay, but they have Negroid features. Although the Arab of today is sharply differentiated. Now watch this. This is what he's about to tell you. He says, although the Arab of today is sharply differentiated from the Negro of Africa, yet there must have been a time when both were represented by a single ancestral stock. In no other way can the prevalence of a certain Negroid feature be accounted for in the natives of Arabia. So he's letting you know that at some point the Arabs and the Negro had to have been from the same stock. Now we know the Arabs come from Ishmael. Okay, we know Ishmael was a son of Abraham that he had with the woman Hagar. Okay, he's letting you know that at some point the Negroes and the Arabs had to have one same similar ancestor, which is actually correct because we come from Abraham as well. You know, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. All right. Anyway, moving on. Let me get that again. Negro Africa, yet there must have been a time when both were represented by a single ancestral stock. In no other way can the prevalence of a certain Negroid features be accounted for in the natives of Arabia. He said no other way. See that? This book cost $900. It's titled Handbook of Territories, was for the Theater of Operations of Iraq Petroleum Company. Let's see what he had to say. He said, in Arabia, the first inhabitants were probably a dark-skinned, shortest population, intermediate between the African Hamites and the Dravidians of India, and forming a single African-Asiatic belt with these. So he's saying the original inhabitants of Arabia had to be dark-skinned. See that? It's the term sand inward, sand blacks. Okay? This is a picture from a book, Hebrew Life and Times by Harold B. Hunton. This is Arab women spinning some type of fabric. Look at her hair. Dark skin. She got some type of matted up locks. They seem to be neglected locks. Or as brothers call it today, I believe they call them freeform dreads. I used to have them when I was a shorty. When I was probably like teens. I used to have them. But my point has been made, but I'm gonna keep going. Muhammad al-Nafs al-Zakiyah was a descendant of the Prophet Muhammad, the so-called Prophet Muhammad. You know, I'm not into Islam. But was a descendant of the Islamic Prophet Muhammad, this guy, right? Well, as you can see on the picture, he's a so-called black person. Okay? This is Muhammad al-Nafs al-Zakiyah, the pure-blooded Yahawashi. Muhammad al-Nafs al-Zakiyah was black-skinned and huge. Okay? Al-Tabari says, Muhammad al-Nafs al-Zakiyah was tall, jet black skinned, and huge. He was nicknamed the Bituminous because of his blackness, and Abu Jafar al-Masya used to call him charcoal. Okay, this is bitumen, black. This is charcoal, black. So here you have the son of, I believe he's actually the grandson of Muhammad, because this is the son of his daughter, I think. But anyway, as you can see, he's so-called black. Hassan ibn Ali, grandson of Islamic Prophet Muhammad, Al-Hassan was so-called black-skinned that he was nicknamed the father of tar. All right? That is blackness. All right? You see that? But anyway, now let's get some paintings. See some paintings. This is Horace Vernet, French painter. This is his painting. This is what he titled his painting, A Portrait of an Arab. As you can see, he's so-called black-skinned. Adolf Schreyer, 1828. He made paintings of Arabs too. Arab Chieftain and his entourage by Adolf Schreyer. As you can see, so-called black-skinned people, dark-skinned people. Arab Horseman, Adolf Schreyer, dark-skinned. The advanced painting on Adolf Schreyer. Look, black-skinned. The Charge, Adolf Schreyer. All right, dark-skinned, complected. Arab Sage, dark-skinned, complected. Rudolph Ernest painted that. All right, these are all called so-called Arabs. Half-length portrait of an Arab boy, dark skin complected by Frederick Goodall. According to the New York Public Library, 1577, this is a man in Arabia, dark-skinned. Okay? Here's some pictures of people in Saudi Arabia. A woman and her young child in Saudi Arabia in 1918. And this is another woman in Saudi Arabia in 1918, dark-skinned complected. The country of Jordan, by the way, because I'm going to show some pictures of people in Jordan. And these are people in Jordan. Kuwait, Jordan, so-called dark skin. This is a guy who's clearly mixed, if not just straight up Turk, with black skin complected people. Once again, in Jordan is right above Saudi Arabia, next to Syria and Iraq. Okay? Here's some more people of Jordan. All right? So-called black. You got this one person. He resembles the so-called modern Arab, right? Quote-unquote modern Arab. The mixtured one. Okay? Here's some Arabs in modern times. Once again, Arab features, but they're dark-skinned. Dark-skinned Arabs. More dark-skinned Arabs. More dark-skinned Arabs. More dark-skinned Arabs. Okay? Look at this dude. Okay? More dark-skinned Arabs in the background, along with the other ones, the admixed. And there's even a guy, I believe he's just a so-called, straight-up so-called white man. Dark-skinned Arabs. Dark-skinned Arab. There's a dark-skinned Arab right there. Got a lot of pictures. Here's a whole pictures of a bunch of so-called dark-skinned Arabs. Kuwait. Alright, dark-skinned Arabs. Keep going. Look at that. Dark-skinned Arabs. These are the true Ishmaelites. Okay, this is the true Ishmaelite right here. Okay? Now, this one might be a foreigner. This one a foreigner. Look at her. Like somebody you see in America. That would identify as so-called African American. You know, who knows? But, yeah, dark-skinned Arabs. More dark-skinned people. I mean, you know, my point hasn't been made. Look at these people, man. The dark-skinned Arabs. Here's a picture in Cairo, Egypt. Farmers. See how dark-skinned they were in Egypt in 1882. Which makes me think of a guy, Jean-Francois Champollion, which is known as the father of Egypt. He was born in 1790. This is what Jean-Francois Champollion had to say in this book, Letters of Egypt. It's in French. I can't pronounce it. But anyway, this is what it reads in the book. The first tribes that inhabited Egypt, that is the Nile Valley between the Syrian Cataract and the sea, came from Abyssinia to Sinai. The ancient Egyptians belonged to a race quite similar to Kenis or Barbarous, presidents and inhabitants of Nubia. So he's saying the ancient Egyptians were black because the Nubians were black. But then he says that in the Copts of Egypt, we do not find any of the characteristic features of the ancient Egyptian population because the ancient Egyptians were black. The Copts, these are what the Copts look like. These are hybrids, so-called mixed. The Copts are the result of crossbreeding with all the nations that have successfully dominated Egypt. It is wrong to seek them in the principal features of the old race. So these are not the original inhabitants. These are admixed. Okay? You have a lot of Turk mulattoes and quadroons, the new Arabs. Some of these people just look like so-called white people. Okay, like this person. Okay, and this person. Now, that some of them are in Albania, Morocco, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Cyprus, Egypt, Bahrain, and Algeria. All right, that's because that Turk admixture. So much so that, according to the American census, when some of the Middle Eastern or North African descent goes to the federal government officially categorizes people with origins in Lebanon, Iran, Egypt, and other countries in the MENA region as white. So much so, these people identify as white according to the American census. You would ask why. I know why. Because a lot of these people just look like so-called white people, but they call themselves Arabs. That's because of the Turkish invasion. Okay? I mean, look at this. What's the difference between this guy and a so-called white man in appearance? And the answer is there's no difference. So my point is proven, and I'm going to get some closing thoughts. In conclusion, I say all this, but like I told you, black is not a race, and just because they have the same complexion as us, according to the scriptures, like all the other nations, They are still our enemies. But the truth is the truth, and I want to show who they look like to debunk the people that say that, oh, they look like Arabs. Well, these are the true Arabs. But in conclusion, what I was saying, like the saying goes, all my skin folk ain't kinfolk. Zora Neale Hurston. Now, she was talking about people that have different political ideologies, but I'm saying that everybody that has the skin complexion of black is not the same as the American Negro or them abroad, right? It's not the same, okay? Just because these so-called people are dark-skinned, according to the scriptures, like all the other heathen nations, they are our enemies. Psalms chapter 83, verse 1. A song or psalm of Asaph, keep not thou silence, O God, hold not thy peace, and be not still, O God. For lo, thine enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up the head. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people, and consulted against thy hidden ones. They have said, come, and let us cut them off for being a nation, that the name of Israel may no more be remembered. So they want to get rid of us. They want to get rid of our and hide our identity. For they have consulted together with one consent. They are confederate against thee. The tabernacles of Edom and the Ishmaelites of Moab and the Hagarenes, and the list goes down. But Edom and the Ishmaelites are the first people mentioned. All right, top ops, if you will. Edomites be the so-called white man. We already proved who the Ishmaelites are, right? So, and the Ishmaelites do well at trying to hide our identity as well. Why? Because they claim that they've always been in Egypt. All right, like they're the original inhabitants, even though I told you 640 AD is when they got up there. And for those that say, oh, those aren't the enemies, it says the enemies of God, right? Because it says for lo thy enemies. He's talking to God, right? They'll say, hold up, wait a minute, they're not our enemies, they're God's enemies. Well, the enemy of God is the enemy to me. All right, that's in Psalms 139. Psalms 139, verse 19 on down. Surely thou wilt slay the wicked, O God. Depart from me, therefore, ye bloody men. For they speak against thee wickedly, and thine enemies take thy name in vain. We know the enemies are the listed above, the heathens. Enemies take the Lord's name in vain. And guess what? They're our enemies. Do not I hate them, O Lord, that hate thee. So I hate the enemies of the Most High God. I hate the enemies of Yahawah. And I'm not I grieve with those that rise up against thee. I hate them with perfect hatred. I count them mine enemies. You see that? I count them mine enemies. So an enemy of God is an enemy to me. Okay? Once again, thine enemies. So thine enemies, and this is the listed number, these different nations. Term nation goes back to the term race. All right? So that's still the thing. And if that wasn't enough, Nehemiah 5:9 calls the heathen our enemy straight up. Nehemiah 5:9. Also I said, it is not good that ought ye not walk in the fear of our God, because of the reproach of the heathen, our enemies. So the heathen are our enemies, man. And in conclusion, yeah, all skin folk and kinfolk. Black is not a race, okay? And yes, there was an Arab slave trade where they had our people in slavery, okay? Just like how you had so-called black Africans that had our people in slavery. Just like you had the so-called white man that had our people in slavery. Like it tells you in 1 Maccabees 2:10. What nation hath not had a part in her kingdom and gotten of her spoils? Speaking of Judah and Jerusalem. Okay, so in verse 7. So all these nations have been confederate and took us for a spoil and took advantage of us and had us in slavery. Even though once upon a time, we were the ones that ruled over these nations. All right, like the so-called black man had slave markets of Turkish women, so-called Caucasians. All right, look, a prisoner, so-called white man. That's once upon a time. But now we are their song. We're their byword. They use us as servants. They treat us like absolute trash. And there's a reason for that. There's a reason for that. 2nd Ezra 6:54, which states, and after these Adam also, whom thou madest Lord over all thy creatures, Lord of all thy creatures, of him come we all, and the people also whom thou hast chosen. The people who he chose were the Israelites. All this have I spoken before thee, O Lord, because thou madest the world for our sakes. All right, the world was made for the sakes of the Israelites. Now watch this. As for the other people which also come of Adam, the other nations, thou hast said that they are nothing, but be like unto spittle, and as like in the abundance of them unto a drop that falleth from a vessel. All right, so these heathen are considered nothing, but guess what? They rule over us currently, because next verse, 2 Ezra 6:57. And now, O Lord, behold, these heathen, which have ever been reputed as nothing, have begun to be lords over us and to devour us. So now they're lords over us and they devour us, even though they were once nothing. And once upon a time we ruled over them, believe it or not. All right. And the slave trades, the transatlantic, the Arab, the Barbary slave trade. You can also look up the Mediterranean slave trade. Okay, they've all had part in our spoil, man. And with that, in conclusion, that's just the proof of what I was talking about, man. All right, that's the true history of the original Arab. Okay. You know, that was a long video, man. Took me a week to do it, but I got it done. You know, through the spirit of Pavi Yahawah Shai, I thank him for allowing me to finish this project. And with that, hopefully this was a edifying lesson. And with that, I say peace to the 12. I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to the Heavenly Father, the Most High Yahawah, in the name of His only begotten Son, yahawashi. Yahawah is the name of the Heavenly Father, who is commonly known as God. And yahawashi is the Savior of the nation of Israel, who is commonly known as Jesus Christ. I want to say shalom, which means peace, to you people that are listening and learning, to you brothers that's doing this work, truth, sincerity, and to you elders that's been doing this thing before me, man. I'm going to keep making these history videos, man, because that's just what I like to do. Even before I was in this truth, I was in the history, but it just turned out that the history that I was into is all fake, whitewashed, and fragmented. But I'm still in the history. I'm still a big history buff, man. You know, and I'm gonna do videos on all the nations of the scriptures eventually. I've already done, like I said, I did videos on India, North America, South America, Europe, the Vikings. I've done many videos. Anyway, that's pretty much it. Once again, I say shalom, which means peace. Safe travels by Yathia Sharala, which means house of Israel. I'm gone. Peace.